Hi everyone, my name is Mollie. I am a final year Classical Civilisations student, and I'm here because I did my dissertation on the coin collection here at Leeds, and I investigated how female personifications are presented on Imperial Roman coinage that was minted in Rome using only coins in the Leeds coin collection, which I've got a selection here. So my dissertation, my undergrad dissertation, involved going through the catalogued coins in the Leeds coin collection. For those of you who don't know, so we're in Cultural Collections at the moment, and the university owns over 20,000 coins that are here, carefully curated and kept safe. But of those coins, over 6,000 are catalogued, which means that you can look them up on the website. So you can look at different search parameters. We've got loads of different types of coins. We've got Imperial Roman coins, Republican Roman coins, going all the way up to the more modern era, so only a couple hundred years old as well. But yeah, my dissertation focused on Imperial Roman coinage, and specifically how they represent women. So what that involved was I had to do a lot of spreadsheeting, which involved going through the catalogue and picking out which coins I wanted to use. Originally, I did want to do my project on all of Imperial Roman coinage that had any type of woman on it. Unfortunately, that scope was a bit large for an undergrad dissertation, so I narrowed it down to personifications. And for my project, I defined personifications as any abstract form or process or place personified and represented by a female woman. So for example, we have victory, the personification of victory is presented as a woman, usually with wings on coins. That's pretty common. So yeah, that was how I defined my dissertation for personifications. However, some other groups that I looked at as well were historical women. There were lots of historical women on these coins that emperors would mint to show their female family members. There would be captives, there would be goddesses as well, but yeah, so there were lots of different groups to choose from, but my personifications were only of value, like victory, peace, security, of thing, which was the Annona coinage, which was the personification of the grain supply, and finally personification of place, so different provinces represented on these coins. So that was the main crux of my dissertation, was going through these collections and seeing how women were represented. So there were lots of different patterns that I found. For example, if the emperor wanted to present himself in a certain way, he would often use a personification of value, such as if he'd won a military victory recently, he would present victory on these coins. If there was peace within the empire, he would put peace on them, and so on. You can see the correlation. But also, even if these things weren't happening, for example, we can see correlations of when emperors would actually be losing battles, they would put victory and peace on these coins, as in to welcome them into the empire. That does also bring up another debate of whether these coins were propaganda or not, or whether the emperor was just looking to welcome these things into the empire. That's another debate that I discussed in a later chapter of my dissertation as well. So yeah, that was one of the correlations that I found, but also there were lots of ties to historical events. For example, in the provinces, if there were events happening, emperors would often mint these provinces on the coins. For example, Emperor Decian put Dacia on a lot of his coinage because he had a lot of military exploits down there. So he wanted to communicate to the people, look at what I'm doing in Dacia, and I'm winning battles as well. But finally as well, female family members of Roman emperors would be represented on these coins. For example, if the emperor was looking to produce heirs to continue his line for the throne, or I need to erase that because it's not a throne, I can't say that. Yeah. Female family members would be placed on these coins as well of the emperors. For example, if the emperor was looking to continue his line through an heir, he would put his female family members, such as his wife or daughters, or even his sons as well, alongside his wife on these coins to make sure that the dynasty was continued and that his bloodline continued throughout the empire. But also, if these sons and these heirs were born as well, they would be put on these coins alongside personifications such as Hilaritas, which is the personification of cheerfulness, and Letitia, which is the personification of happiness, showing that it is a happy time for the heir to be born and brought into the empire, so the dynastic house can continue and flourish. So yeah, there's quite a lot of different reasons that women were minted on coins as well, and they have a lot of connections, the personifications, to historical women as well, which is really important. For example, Pudicia, which we actually have a coin of here. She is always minted, so 100% of the time, with a historical woman. Pudicia is the personification of female chastity and modesty, so it's quite obvious why Roman emperors would want to present them together. To show that the dynastic house is flourishing, but also it showed that women did have a lot of power to be recorded on these coins. Historically, women have struggled to be represented in the literary record in ancient Rome and also the material record, but coins are one of the few mediums that can address this imbalance, so we see a lot of women on coins. My research showed that within the Leeds coin collection, 59% of Imperial Roman coinage had some type of woman on it, which is really great to see, because I didn't think it was going to be that high when I started my research. So that was really nice to see. And then I think it drops to around 40% of coins had a personification on them, which was really nice to see as well. And it just shows that women were really important. Of course, women, it was one of their main responsibilities to continue the dynastic house for the emperor and to continue this going forward, which was vital. Of course, the empire wouldn't have survived and the emperor wouldn't have had any heirs if it weren't for these women. So it's really important. And also sometimes we see some women minted on coins alongside younger emperors to show their experience. For example, some of these emperors like Elagabalus was only 14 years old when he took the throne. So as a result, his grandmother was presented on these coins to show that there is a little bit more experience behind the throne as well. So a lot of very interesting patterns, but I think the key takeaway is women were very, very important in this era, and it's lovely to see that coins can represent women in these ways because they're not often represented in literary sources. So coins and, for example, epigrams, which is on funerary tablets and things, those are the main ways that we know about women, especially women that weren't empresses or very high up as well. We do have representation of these women in other aspects. But my dissertation wasn't just purely analysing that. That was the main part of my dissertation. However, the last two chapters were slightly different. So in chapter 4, I looked at, did people actually pay attention to coinage? Because obviously we have these beautiful designs spanning hundreds of years that lots of people would have put effort into designing. But the question was, did people actually pay attention to them? In the literary record, coins aren't mentioned that much and historians don't pay attention to them, which at first can be a bit confusing. But there are some mentions of it. For example, there is a tale apparently that a man rejected a coin of Nero and took one of Trajan instead, despite the coin of Trajan actually being worth less. So that shows that this man clearly looked at this coin and said, I don't like Nero, I don't want that coin, I want one of Trajan instead. Nero was also a famously very disliked emperor. We also have evidence of his face being scratched out on coinage or being stamped over with other letters as well, because he was famously disliked, because there was a rumour that may or may not have been true that he burnt down Rome to get some social credit. So yeah, not great standing for an emperor to be doing that. But yeah, those were just two examples, but also there's a passage in the Bible that shows Jesus paying attention to a coin that has Caesar on it, and it relates to paying taxes. And also there were laws written by the Senate that says these coins are minted in our name and face. So it clearly shows that there's awareness from the minting authority and the people that would use these coins, what was on these coins and what they represented for the people as well. As part of this chapter, I also looked at who designed these coins, which is a very hotly contested debate in numismatics, which is the study of coinage. Some people believe that the emperors chose the coin design. Some people believe that it was the minting authority. There's quite a bit of debate, but I don't think that the emperor designed the coins. I think he honestly would have been too busy with lots of better things to do. He might have had some kind of oversight and maybe veto power when looking at these coins, but I think it was probably the minting authority. And there's a really interesting theory as well that supposedly the people that worked in the mints to make these coins would have been quite young. And there's some interesting theories that actually they aimed to flatter the emperor, so they would have made really nice designs, making the emperor's portrait look really, really good, and also putting these personifications onside the emperor to flatter the emperor, so potentially they could climb the social ladder and make it further up into the mint authority management as well. That's a very interesting theory, which I did explore in my dissertation. So that was my fourth chapter. And my final chapter looked into whether the Leeds coin collection is representative of the wider material record. And I did this by doing, again, a lot of spreadsheeting, a lot of statistical analysis, comparing the coin collection to rarity ratings, which are found in Roman Imperial Coinage, which is the big coin indices written across, I think, 20 years. And they have a rarity rating beside each coin. So the authors would look at how many coins were in each collection around the world, for example, in the British Museum and other collections, and they would give them a rarity rating. And the correlation that I found was there was no extremely rare coinage that was found in really high amounts in the collection. So as the coin got rarer, the lower the frequency they would be found in, but also the lower amount of duplicates there would be as well. For example, there are some coins in the collection that are 8 of the exact same coin. So there's quite a lot of those, but those are all common. So that would be a pretty expected pattern. However, when I did compare to a number of other case studies, I did 4 main case studies, which had, I think, sample sizes of about 100,000 coinage, so quite a bit bigger than what we have in the coin collection at Leeds. There weren't many groups that were adequately represented. Some of them were really underrepresented and being completely absent from the collection, at least in the catalogue collection that we have, whilst on the other hand, we have coins that are represented over 1,000 times higher than you would see in the material record. So I think in the end, there was only 6 groups that were adequately represented in the collection. So it was really interesting to explore that and see if there were rare coins, if there were really common coins as well, which was good to explore because it meant that I could look at the coins and go, okay, this one's really rare, which we do have one here, which is the first example of a woman ever being minted on an Imperial Roman coin. So that was really nice to see, and to flag that was really great as well. But yeah, it was really interesting to see the different rarity in the collection, and we did find that the collection does have several very rare coinage that was only minted for a few months at a time during the Empire. So that was really interesting to see. But also it means that the collection can target its cataloguing. So I found that some female personifications were completely absent from the collection. So it means that there is a likely chance that they are actually in the collection, but they're not catalogued. So if cataloguing efforts do look to identify certain female figures, we can look at these coins and go, oh, the collection doesn't have any catalogued coins with that woman on it, let's try and look for these. So I think that was really valuable, and can hopefully mean that the collection can target cataloguing efforts in future as well. Yeah, so that was the crux of my research. Those are my structure of my chapters, and I'll quickly go through some of these coins. I've mentioned a few earlier in my discussion, but this one on this side is a gold coin of Vespasian presenting a Nona, which is a personification of the grain supply. And here she is seated tying the corn bags, which is actually quite a rare depiction of a Nona, because usually she would be depicted standing with a grain weight at her feet and usually a corn ear in her hand. However, because this coin is so valuable, so this coin made of gold, it would only be the richest people of Rome would be handling this. This slightly rare depiction shows audience targeting. So I did investigate this in my dissertation as well, where certain coins, if they were made on gold, silver and copper, would be made completely differently and would look different as well. So for this coin, she's seated and she's tying the grain bags, which is actually a role that the aediles would do in Rome, which is quite a high up political office. So it's clear that the minting authority targeted this design to only be seen by the rich people, because only the richest in Rome would handle these coins. So it's kind of a nod to the aediles and high political officers saying, we know that you're managing the grain supply, and this is how we're going to represent you on coins as well. So it's not just that women would be represented on coins, but they would also nod to certain attributes of people at Rome. And we can see this going down the line. We get to slightly less valuable coins, but the gold ones would only be held by the richest people, and as a result, the images that these coins bear nod to them and their role that they would have in Rome. Next, we have a gold coin of Valens with a victory. It's very, very small, but he's actually holding, the Emperor Valens is holding a staff, and then he's also holding victory in his other hand, which is quite common. As I mentioned earlier, that victory would be a pretty common attribute for emperors to welcome and possess in the empire. If there was any military victories or they were looking to win military battles, they would usually carry victory. So it's quite common for victory to either be held by the emperor or for victory to be flying around above the head as well. So that's a very nice coin. Similarly to the Annona coin, these coins would only be handled by the richest people in Rome. So not many people would have access to this, but yeah, they're very well preserved, which is nice to see as well. Next, we have a silver coin with Pietas depicted on it, and Pietas is the personification of religious righteousness in Rome. This was a particular favourite of all emperors to present on their coinage, because the Roman emperor was undoubtedly connected to the gods. By taking the role of emperor, it was seen that they would have been loved by the gods and they would have almost been chosen by the gods to take that role. So pietas was a particular favourite to mint on these coinage, and it was very important for the emperor to do correct religious conduct, to make sure that all festivals and all offerings were complete in all honour of the gods as well. So they really enjoyed minting this on coinage as well, because it was one of the best attributes for an emperor to have, was to be respectful of the gods, and if not, it would mean that maybe bad omens would happen and bad things would happen. And historically, looking back on Roman literature, you can see that sometimes if bad things happen, like earthquakes or anything like that, a lot of it would be put down to that emperor didn't respect the gods. So that's a very key attribute as well that we have on this silver coin. And next we have, as I spoke about earlier, a very, very nice coin. Not unfortunately in the best condition, but it is the first coin to mint of the empire, a female personification. And this is a coin of Augustus, who was the first emperor of Rome. And this shows a tiny little victory on top of the Sister Mystica, surrounded by two snakes. So the Sister Mystica was a box that was linked to foresight. So the emperor would usually put himself around that to show the prosperity of Rome and that he can see the future, again, kind of linking to the religious aspect as well, because the Sister Mystica both shows foresight of divinity, so both of the god but also the emperor. So we have a little box here surrounded by snakes, which also links to the health of Rome as well, because snakes were commonly linked to the health and welfare of Rome. So that's a very nice little coin, which is the first instance of a personification being minted on Roman coinage in the empire. So that's really cool, and that has Augustus's bust on the back as well. And then moving on to these two coins, these are copper sesterces, and this first one has securitas on it, and it's quite large compared to the previous ones as well if we look at the size difference. So the copper coins tended to be quite a bit bigger. So this is securitas, and then on this side we have Pudicia, which is similar size as well, the female personification of female modesty. So these two coins were more general personifications. These ones are easier to link to kind of historical events, especially victory with military victories. These ones are more general, so security would link to the security of the state. She's seated here, usually in a dress as well, seated. So she would be a more general attribute that the emperor would say, look, the empire is secure, my rule has brought security. That can be done through a number of things, can be done through military victory, through personification of the corn supply. It can be done as well through the emperor giving money to the people. So there are lots of different ways that security would be represented. But also, if the emperor didn't have anything particularly interesting going on, he would mint these kind of general attributes to show the people what he'd been doing. And then Pudicia as well, always presented with a female figure on the reverse, which is on this side. Unfortunately, it's quite good condition, you can see here. We have a female figure on this side, which was the wife of the emperor. So very important coin. And again, 100% of coins with Pudicia would link them to historical women. So that's, again, a nice link to see a link between historical women and personifications on coinage as well. And finally, we've got these three coins on this side, which are all linked. So these are the personification of place coinage. So we have three different provinces. So we have Judea, Armenia, and Arabia. And all of these areas would be presented with different objects that would be related to their province. So on this side, we have Judea seated in mourning, and this is pretty common for most personifications of provinces, as the emperor and the minting authority wanted to be shown to be dominating these provinces and say these are part of the Roman Empire now, that tends to be why they're shown in mourning. So on this side we have Judea. Next to some shields and some spears as she sits to that side in mourning, surrounded by some dots on the outside as well. Then here we have a coin of Armenia. Armenia is almost always represented with a bow. Not entirely sure why, it's just really famous in literature. Their identifying feature is usually a bow, so they're very skilled archers. At the bottom you have their Armenia inscription as well. And then finally on this side we have Arabia, which is usually represented by a camel, a tiny little camel on that side, and then also like sugar canes or reeds on the other side as well. So they would be presented with similar objects that would be associated with their provinces, which would make them identifiable to the Roman people. But also, if these coins did circulate, to these provinces, also these people could say, oh, I'm seeing myself on a coin, and also see that link to the Roman Empire. So we've got quite a range of coins here in material, in time as well, because this one is 28 BC, and some of these go right up to about 300 AD. So quite a wide range of dates and material as well, but also female figures and historical figures as well. So that's the selection that I brought with you today. And yeah, thank you for listening.